When people think of racing games, they think of the perfect racing line in Forza, or the photorealism of Gran Turismo, or the chaotic fun of Mario Kart. What if I told you one of the deepest racing games comes from a series Nintendo hasn't touched in 20 years? Like some of Nintendo's less successful series, Wave Race has been locked away in the vault of embarrassments for decades, quietly whispering something that most players never stop to hear. Join me as we dive into the secret meaning of Wave Race Blue Storm. Wave Race Blue Storm was released on the 14th of September 2001 as a launch game for the Nintendo GameCube. Like almost all the games released on the system, Blue Storm failed to meet its sales expectations, but it is one of the small pantheon of titles which are considered essential retrospectively. But what does it mean? Let's rip some water. Perhaps I should mention that the first game in the series was a Game Boy game called Wave Race, but I don't actually want to spend any time talking about that on account of it being shite. Get rid of it. Wave Race Blue Storm is a sequel to Wave Race 64, which was released shortly after the Nintendo 64 launched and impressively displayed the N64's polygon-pushing power with its intricate rolling wave effects. Visually, it was pretty mind-blowing and quickly exemplified the differences in capabilities between the N64 and the PlayStation. The gloopy water in Wave Race 64 has a real beauty to it. I want to go on holiday there. I want to emigrate to wherever that water is. Those chunky polygons are so cozy and inviting. I want to be immersed in it. I want to feel it all dribble down my face, which is a totally normal thing to want. Wave Race 64 is pretty much a perfect game. It's the type of racing game that demands practice. You need to learn the courses and the physics to beat it. You can't just go in blind and vibe it. Both games have this quite old-fashioned progression path. At first, you'll struggle to even finish a race. Then you'll gradually learn to place higher and higher before winning a championship. This is quite an old-world sensibility from a time before games cost hundreds of millions of dollars and several years to produce.
Okay. Good.
Take an all-time classic like Contra III, for example. You are not expected to finish this game in one sitting. You try your best, die, try again, get a little further, die, and keep trying and learning until you reach the end. As a side note, the first time I saw this, I was absolutely terrified. I would say the turning point, when games stopped being so difficult and made more of an effort to welcome low-skilled players, was around the time Microsoft entered the console space and brought a more American oligarchic capitalist approach of, quote-unquote, it takes money to make money. So game budgets and production values exploded, and occasionally revenues as well, but frequently the extra budgetary demands brought a lot of bankruptcies. As a result, we saw this trend of big-budget games becoming less challenging because producers noticed the new, more casual audience was unwilling to stick with games they felt were too difficult. The reduction in challenge was an attempt to curb people trading their games in too quickly. The majority of game sales occur in the first few weeks of release, so if too many people traded their games in too quickly, it would be too easy for people to buy second-hand copies, and this would have a serious impact on sales figures. Another measure developers used to try to curb this trading in habit was adding multiplayer modes, even if they really didn't belong in certain types of games. Now, I loved Mass Effect, particularly Mass Effect 2. I played it over and over again. This was obviously before I had a child, and I had the time to play games for more than one single hour at a time.
I'm not doing this just so they can find our frozen corpses.
I played it through, then I played it again on a harder difficulty setting. Then I tried to play it on the hardest difficulty setting, and it was only then that I realized it was supposed to be a cover-based shooter. I'd spent the whole time just strafing, like I was playing GoldenEye. It's a brilliant game, but they made it so easy that I didn't even need to know the main gameplay mechanic. So around this time, games started becoming easier and more cinematic. Cinematic in this context meaning something you watch rather than play. I would place another inflection point in 2011 with the release of Dark Souls. Since then, we've seen a revival of more challenging games like Wave Race. It was only when editing this part about Dark Souls I realized I'd gone on a tenuously relevant 90-minute rant about game difficulty. Now, I don't know if you guys like to psychoanalyze yourselves, but you should. It's way cheaper than having a professional do it. After contemplating this, I think the reason is, as I talk about later, I failed to finish Bluestorm on the expert difficulty, and I think I must have felt emasculated by that. Because there's a macho element to difficult games like Dark Souls, isn't there? It's like,
are you man enough for Dark Souls, little boy? Or are you a little bitch?
So I think I got defensive and wanted to talk about Dark Souls to prove how manly and therefore awesome at games I am. Look at how many humanities I have. 13. Have you ever had 13 humanities? No, because you don't have my T levels. You've got mid-tea. You probably cut the tea bag open with scissors and pour the herbs into a cup like a maniac. I forgot what I was talking about. I'm sorry about the image quality on these captures, by the way. I thought the cheapest capture card I could find on eBay would be of a more professional quality. It's probably because I'm such a masculine man that I refuse to do any womanly things like research. God damn it, Queelag. This video is sponsored by dickfucks. Dickfuck is my favourite word in the English language. I use it at least 10 times a day out loud, and probably 100 times a day in the privacy of my own mind. You know when you see someone and you're like, look at that dickfuck. So if you'd like to get in on the ground floor and start using this exciting new word, go to dickfucks.co.uk and start your dickfuck journey today, you dumb dickfuck. The music in Wave Race 64 is pretty perfect, like a votive offering to the gods of summer, with its dreamy synthwave sounds. I have to say, the music for Bluestorm is not on the same level. Instead of dreamy synthwave, it's this. It's typically quickly more aggressive and gets progressively more aggressive the more furious the weather gets. This is a very apposite change, as this game is more aggressive and furious than 64. The first time you play Bluestorm, you'll probably say something along the lines of, "Why in the shit is it so absurdly fast?" Even though I don't like the music in Bluestorm as much as the music in 64, I have to give it huge credit for the sheer amount of music in it. Each character has their own theme music, which only plays during the character selection screen, and you'll probably only hear it for a few seconds. Each course has several versions of its music depending on the weather. The styles of music in the soundtrack are actually really varied, from this to this. I'm not going to call it eclectic because not all of it works for me. In both games, you race between buoys used as slaloms, passing yellow buoys on the left and red buoys on the right. Here's a quick note on the word buoy. In England, where I'm from, it's spelled the same but it's pronounced buoy, as in buoyant. A buoy is something defined by its buoyancy. However, to avoid confusion and you thinking I'm talking about weird things like smacking into yellow buoys or passing by red buoys, I'll employ the American pronunciation instead. You can only miss a few buoys before being disqualified, but this isn't just a challenge, it's also a tactical consideration. This part of Ocean City Harbour on expert difficulty has you laboriously making wide zigzags over ramps to pass every buoy correctly. But if you skip this red one, you can change your path to very nearly a straight line, while all of the CPU racers waste several seconds skiing around it like suckers. You do need to be very careful missing buoys though, because being disqualified from a course for accidentally missing your last buoy feels like a real kick in the teeth. Particularly if you're several rounds into a championship, it means you're going to get 0 points for that course. This puts you at a severe disadvantage, which is almost impossible to recover from on harder difficulty settings. Bluestorm adds several new tactical considerations to the formula. Beyond missing buoys, you also have a turbo option, which you build up by passing buoys correctly or performing tricks if you're feeling fancy.
Careful on the corners. The weather's kicking up some big waves out there. 3, 2, 1, go!
Deciding when to use it is important. The jet skis, by their very nature, are a little tricky to control. You can quite easily bump into things or get stuck on the scenery like this. So firing off a turbo and crashing straight into a wall happens a lot until you get better. Some shortcuts or jumps, however, should not be attempted without a turbo. Another all-new tactical consideration is the dynamic weather. This wouldn't have been even remotely possible in Wave Race 64. Even all these decades later, I still think the weather effects in Bluestorm are incredibly cool. Other, more recent games have perhaps more realistic or beautiful weather, but the weather in Bluestorm actually means something. it has a deep effect on the race. In Wave Race 64, the waves were pre-programmed and entirely predictable. I know there's going to be a big wave at the same point in this course every time, so I can use it to leap over this barrier like this. Woo! Woo! Woohoo! Fuck you! This isn't the case in Blue Storm. The water feels much more alive and kind of random. In Blue Storm, you can see a 3-day weather prediction when going through a championship, and you can choose which course to race on which day. If there's a course you struggle with, you'll probably want to attempt it on a clear day with smaller waves. Some of the stormy, rainy weather conditions add a lot of extra challenge, but sometimes they make it a little easier. High rain on Aspen Lake, for example, raises the water level and puts some of these rocks underwater. Blue Storm is very dynamic. In 64, Southern Island is the only course in which things really change. The water level lowers with each lap, revealing more obstacles and potential shortcuts, like this pier, which you can ski under from the second lap onwards. In Blue Storm, every course seems to have some crazy barriers to break through, or massive objects which fall into the water, like this iceberg.
Watch out!
Or this second iceberg. Or this shipping container. Or this tanker which seems to be trying to crush you, like the opening sequence in that James Bond movie. Do you know the one I mean? I think it was one of those awful Pierce Brosnan ones. These all create big disruptions to the water. When the weather gets worse and the waves get more aggressive, it's all pretty chaotic and challenging. Another new thing in Blue Storm is the way other racers leave a disruptive wake in the water. The water in Wave Race 64 was all set, and you couldn't interact with it other than being bumped by it. The way the racers disrupt the water like this couldn't be done on the N64. This means that, like a lot of racing games, it's much easier to stay at the front of the pack than jostle for position with all the other racers.
Race, you're about 1 second ahead.
The different difficulty levels in Blue Storm change the courses quite a lot. So much so that they actually feel like completely different courses that are merely set in the same biome. This is something we'll see again in 1080 Avalanche. For example, in Arctic Bay, depending on the difficulty level, you'll either be racing clockwise or anti-clockwise, which feels very subversive. Like, am I allowed to be doing this? All these ramps are suddenly pointing in the wrong direction. The courses at different difficulty settings all seem to take very different paths through the areas. This, again, means that you can't just rock up and win the circuit. You have to practice each version of each course. Otherwise, you'll try a harder difficulty and turn a corner expecting to see a certain layout, only to end up missing 3 buoys in a row. My biggest complaint about this game is how frequently I get stuck on the scenery. There doesn't seem to be an easy way to break out of that once you get stuck, and sometimes this happens.
What's going on? You need to get your feet out in the water!
You just burned turbo.
I'm getting buffeted by these waves, and it feels like I can't turn properly to get back on course. It's really frustrating when that happens. Getting stuck for even 2 seconds feels excruciating as everyone sails past you. Going back to the old-school difficulty sensibilities, the normal difficulty championship is quite fun. The hard championship is pretty challenging, but the expert championship is a nightmare and made me swear so much. Would you on the get why are you there? Why are you just staying there? Oh yeah, just stay there. Just stay. It's fine. I I really wanted to finish the Expert Championship so I could unlock the ability to select all of the weather settings and get some good captures of that. I ended up playing it for about 4 or 5 hours, going way over my 1 hour budget, and I still couldn't do it. I got very close here, but then when I got to Loratza Canal, this happened. I just couldn't catch up to even 7th place.
Just under turbo. You're gonna have to pick up the pace, man.
It does seem like there's something weird going on with the scoring system when you don't have enough points to continue, but you're still in 2nd place overall. And hi. None of that sounds like an allegory for the coercive nature of capital. You're very wrong, because that's exactly what it is. If you read this magazine, you won't find an interview with the game's director, whose name is... If you'll indulge me, I'm afraid I must paraphrase this fictional interview.
Hello, Neo.
They talk about that scene at the end of Matrix Reloaded, where Neo meets the architect. The scene had a profound influence on the design of Wave Race. The architect gives Neo an ultimatum: either choose a few humans to start another human colony, or they'll make the whole human race extinct.
There are 2 doors. The door to your right leads to the Source and the salvation of Zion. The door to your left leads back to the Matrix, to her, and to the end of your species.
This is the choice fascism gives you: submit or die. You may have been convinced that the fascists are working for you or represent you, but this is an illusion. You cannot negotiate with fascists, you cannot reason with them or appease them. Fascism is the autocratic political manifestation of egomania. It's only a matter of time before they stab you in the back. Even their bishops are not guaranteed safety, and frequently, the most devout adherents are the ones who are purged first, as we see in Nazi Germany and Trump's America. It's important to note that capitalism is not always fascism, but fascism is always capitalism. The main distinction to make is that capitalism does not blatantly commit acts of genocide. It does so subtly, covertly. It claims that it has been forced to commit atrocities in defense of something, usually something vague and nebulous, like values or a way of life. The choice between Republicans and Democrats can seem like a superficial one when they both represent the interests of the same corporations and will never represent your interests unless you're a millionaire. Capitalism wants you to make choices like this from within the spectrum of choices that they want, and capitalists spend a lot of resources on obscuring or vilifying the choices outside of the spectrum. When Margaret Thatcher ordered the British police and military forces to savagely attack unarmed protesters during the miners' strikes, she justified this fascistic and criminal act by claiming the trade unionists were the violent ones. Or, if not actually violent, they were probably planning violence. This myth was propagated so widely it's still repeated today. Their real crime, of course, was wielding power through their trade unions, which threatened the interests of the elites. And this, Thatcher decided, was a choice which needed to be removed from the spectrum. As capitalism becomes more deregulated and consequently wealth becomes increasingly concentrated amongst the worst people, and we slide further into authoritarianism, the spectrum of choices offered to us by the state becomes narrower and narrower until eventually the final choice we're left with is to submit or die. One could argue that it's more accurate to say that the spectrum of choices offered by capitalism is merely an illusion, and the binary choice between submission or death is all the system really offers. What can be done then? What can we do to avoid becoming the subjects of the petty whims of an incompetent, megalomaniacal, small-handed dictator? When Rage Against the Machine had a Christmas #1 in the UK, they were invited onto the BBC for a live performance on the condition that they didn't swear. This was their response to that ultimatum.
I won't do what you tell me. I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you
Get rid of it. Sorry, we needed to get rid of that because that suddenly turned into something we were not... we were expecting it and asked them not to do it, and they did it anyway. So by Joe's records.
The slaloms are like a fascist state. I'm still paraphrasing the made-up interview in this magazine, by the way. Fascists want to force you down a particular path, but you can strategically subvert the system. If the system insists you can only submit or die, there are always other options.
Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me.
So there you go. According to the game's developers, it's a comment on the coercive nature of capital. And now for the big question. Is it worth playing? I found my attempts at the Expert Class Championship frustrating and stressful, and to be honest, I'm slightly relieved to be moving on. Even so, I was definitely getting better at it, and I feel that I could have got there with a few more hours of practice. I was also getting stuck on the scenery much less often. This makes me feel that it's not an unfair game, it's just one that you need to practice at in order to master. And that's okay. So, is it worth playing? Yes, absolutely. But it's not quite as good as Wave Race 64.